Hey everyone, if you don't remember my name is Sean Farrell. I'm the CEO of Managed Solution. And yeah, we've been doing a lot this last year and a half talking about all things Microsoft AI, and a lot of it in particular being around Copilot. There's a lot of buzz around AI and automation and just how we, take a lot of things we used to do very manually and really bring automation and AI into play. And Copilot, whether it be how we use it in our day-to-day lives or how we operate our businesses from just, moving the needle and automating processes, it's really changed the game and all businesses are thinking about it. The one thing that I want people to know about the Microsoft strategy is that Copilot is a component of the overall, what we would call Microsoft AI, future frontier. So when you start thinking about things like Microsoft Azure and AI within that, like Azure OpenAI, or products like Copilot Studio, and my joke has always been it's kind of where the movie gets produced, even down to things like Power Automate and some of the things that we can do within the automation tools that Microsoft provides. Any use case that you as a company can come up with, we can probably bring Microsoft technology to bear and ultimately create that AI strategy for you. So we appreciate everybody joining us. We hope you continue to see what we can do in the future together, and we just appreciate you guys joining in and being amazed by what Jeff's been able to do with these webinars over the last year. So thanks everyone, and we'll see you again.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are. Welcome to our Fall 2025 Copilot webinar series. Can't believe this is already episode 8 and the last of our series. I'm pretty sad, but we've got a lot of things to talk about. We're going to be talking about Copilot, automation, AI-driven workflows in action, and I'm really excited today to really have with me by my side Kyle Malden. Kyle, if you want to make an introduction, go right ahead.
Yeah, hello. My name's Kyle Malden. I'm a pre-sales architect over here at Managed Solution. I'm actually the counterpart to Jeff, who primarily works on the pro services side of the company. I'm actually the pre-sales architect with our managed services side of the company. I have about 15 years in the MSP space, and I've been doing IT for a good 20 years now. Very excited about everything we've been doing with AI and Copilot and just all of the services and automations we've been doing for our clients. So excited to have this discussion.
I'm so glad you're joining me today. And as my counterpart, we can certainly, use the other side of the services because, as Kyle mentioned, I focus mainly on professional services, typically the project-based one-time types of things that are needed. For example, introducing Copilot into an organization, and then we, give you the knowledge and we walk away. Kyle, on the other hand, a lot more long-term relationships, typically with our managed services customer. And my question to you, Kyle, is that what do you kind of envision with AI, maybe even Copilot now? Most of our customers are using Microsoft in one form or another. How do you see this being evolved in managed services?
That's an interesting question, Jeff. You're only limited by your imagination pretty much when it comes to implementing AI. And from the managed service perspective, I mean, I think there's a number of solutions out there, in regards to just triage of your basic tickets to automating certain fixes just from basic requests, such as password requests, to building knowledge bases out of your tickets that could assist your clients with resolving simple issues on their own. Like I said, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, it's funny. I hear a lot, and I actually see a lot, like with some of the tool sets that we use in the managed services side, and RPA is mentioned quite a lot. That's the automation that comes with many of these tool sets. And I kind of have it could be a personal question. People are pretty concerned with AI, and are they, taking over our jobs, our roles? I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that of, how AI plays into kind of, does it take away from, the human aspect of it where you could just use a robot to do this, or is it really producing much more where we actually still need to fulfill more positions?
We can use AI to assist us to aggregate data, to do our jobs better and quicker and resolve issues faster for the customer when used in conjunction with a human counterpart. They may not need a human touch for such a simple issue, and that could free up our technicians to be addressing the more complex issues that require our attention. Um, we implement it properly, where a user can simply interact with a chat bot and through an automation, get their password reset and sent back to them. And
Hmm.
I think that is a good use for AI as opposed to replacing the technician.
Speaking of agents, AI, bots, automation, I'm going to turn our attention to really what we're going to be demonstrating today in terms of how really a fully automated platform can be built in terms of enhancing the business. And by the way, when we talk about enhancing the business, the vertical, it's really kind of limitless. It can apply to HR, finance, marketing, sales. As far as the business vertical itself goes, it actually could apply to manufacturing, healthcare, uh, you name it. It seems kind of like the way that Microsoft has approached the ability to build in automation is really for everyone. And I did want to walk through, an example of what we're going to be showing in terms of how this could become a reality. So in this example, what we're showing is a fully automated, somewhat of a life cycle, if you will, of seeing what a knowledge submission process would be, where maybe there's some standards and procedures documents, and there's a process that has to undergo some type of review before it gets submitted to the official knowledge base. On the other side, there's the knowledge mining where users might need to chat to an agent to get some feedback on the knowledge base that has been built and approved internally by the organization. And this whole process is really enriching the data as time goes on and getting better feedback.
That's interesting. It brings a brand new dynamic to the whole Power Automate system. I mean, a lot of us have been doing automations for a long time, but they're very static. A condition, yes, no, go here, go there. Whereas when you introduce Copilot and AI, it brings a whole new dynamic to the entire automation aspect, where you
Yeah,
can take the data and convert it and analyze it in methods you could never do before.
yeah, it is a whole entirely different way of approaching these things. In this case, on the knowledge submission side, what we would be doing is, say, like a user is directed to a form. Copilot, an agent, can be presented a form if a user asked a question. For example, I am looking for to submitting a lessons learned SOP document. Can you help me out? And so Copilot can respond back with the form link, and the user can go ahead and start filling out the form, which would then uh, create that trigger. So Copilot Studio, by the way, is really on the back end. There's a lot of Power Automate that's involved in terms of producing triggers, topics, actions, and things like that. And in this case, this would be somewhat of like an approval process where humans come in to interact in between to make sure that the SOP document looks good. If it doesn't, there could be some type of process where, this document needs refinement. And of course, like whenever I get that rejection, I always, get a little frustrated. So, the process can go again where they go through, they refine it, it gets approved, and now we have something that's embedded into the knowledge base that is approved both on the human side of things, and also it could be evaluated from Copilot itself or any other types of integration with other knowledge sources. Now, on the other side of the spectrum here is a user might be looking for some lessons learned knowledge where they can simply ask the agent. The agent goes to that knowledge base, which is being built and improved over time, and it can go ahead and give that person that response to, really kind of enhance, okay, what do I need to look out for the next time I do this type of project? And so that's kind of the gist of what I'm going to show you through this. Now that we've seen it on the diagrams, let's see how it looks in the real world. And you're going to see two parts to this. You're going to see the end user experience where I'm going to show you Irvin, Megan, Joni, Isaiah as real people actually doing real things and interacting with Copilot. You're also going to be seeing someone by the name of Hard Hat Henry. Hard Hat Henry he kind of acts like a construction manager or maybe a movie director, but really what he's doing, it's a Copilot Studio agent that's doing a lot of the orchestration in the background. On the other side of the demo, you're going to see how things look on the back end and how they're built with Copilot Studio, including connections to external sources. So let's get right into it here. So Irvin is an office worker, and he is trying to find a form where he can submit either a document, maybe a receipt, maybe some type of information that's actually going to start building the knowledge source. So when Irvin emails Hard Hat Henry, who is built off of Copilot, Hard Hat Henry is going to respond with the link with specific instructions and a lot of other details that the bot does just through natural language. From here, Irvin finds the form. He's going to put in all of the inputs. Now, if you think about this example is an expense submission, but it can also act as a document submission where documents can be stored into SharePoint or whatever knowledge source that you want. There's also tracking that goes along with this, both from the end user and the management. And in this case, Irvin is kind of checking on things to see where his request is in the process here. Now, flipping over to Isaiah is one of the managers that is responsible for double checking the work of employee submissions. And he, in this case, is going to reject the document submission that Irvin made. Now, there could be many reasons why. Maybe it just needs, some updates or some editing. And Joni is another manager that also has the responsibility of also reviewing. So we always want to have at least some redundancy in the approval process in this case. Back to Irvin, he received that rejection notice. Yes, he's a little bummed, but what's going to happen is that he's going to make that correction. And that is the whole idea behind this, is to correct any types of mistakes. Let's put the human aspect into it. Let's make sure things look good and collaborate together. And this flow allows us to do this. Now, all of this up to this point is built off of general Power Automate, but this is also integrated with Copilot Studio, which you're soon going to see. So after the approvals of Isaiah and Joni have been done, Irvin is going to see the email response. Hey, looks good. It's been approved by all parties. And everything is done just within Outlook. So it just makes it nice and easy. And now it's been approved, and the document, whatever he's making, is actually being submitted to the document library. So that is the knowledge submission portion of it. Let's go ahead and turn ourselves over to another user named Megan, who really is simply wanting to get information, and she has some questions that are fairly repetitive questions that probably a lot of people might be asking within the organization. So she's going to email Hard Hat Henry, again, the Copilot Studio agent, and upon that response, he's going to respond really in much of a human manner because he is feeling some of the sentiment of the email, He's looking at the knowledge sources, and Megan can be directed to exactly where the source of the information is that she needs, which in this case is in SharePoint. So she can find the document link and she can go right into the policy that she is looking for. Now, sometimes documents might be stored in different locations. In this case, I built out a Google connector and a Google Drive where other information, maybe some archived information, is residing. So when Megan prompts the question back to Copilot, she's going to try to locate a document that is sitting somewhere else besides Microsoft, and Hard Hat Henry has that information because he, the Copilot agent, is connected right over to the Google platform as well. So in a nutshell, Copilot Studio has access to knowledge sources that are both in Microsoft as well as in Google. Now we're going to turn to the back end and the things that happen between Copilot and Power Automate. And you're going to see a split screen here. On the left is what the end user is doing, and on the right is what Copilot on the back end, along with Power Automate, is doing in terms of all of the flows. Now, I'm in Power Automate right here, and you can see that Copilot is embedded in Power Automate where you can ask it a question in the case where you might have a project that was handed over by someone and you need to get quickly up to speed on what this flow is actually doing. So with that said, we're going to look at it in action, and we'll put it in a test mode here just to get an idea of what Power Automate itself does. Now, this technology has been around for, as Kyle mentioned, quite some time, but this is one of those elements that's embedded within Copilot Studio that's going to really help us out here. Now, if you remember from the diagrams that there was an approval process, and when the approval process is there, it's going to start and it's going to wait for an approval to happen once a form or some type of trigger happens. At this point, you're going to see on the left side that one of the managers is going to go in and start that approval process. In this case, it's a rejection, and you can see that it just took the condition based on whether it was true or false in the approval. Now, I'm not going to bore you and go through the entire process again with what happens when it was accepted and it was approved, but you're going to see that the same type of situation applies here, where the condition now that it was approved, it goes through the true area and it sends an email off to the end user, and the document gets saved into the SharePoint knowledge base. So all of that is great. We've been there quite for a few years now, but now Copilot Studio, we're going to see how this sits on top of Power Automate and how it all connects together. Now, Copilot Studio, by the way, you can see there's templates that are there. The agent that I built, his name is HenryBot, and I'm going to show you one of the key features and probably the most important thing that you're going to want to know and walk away from when you're building your first Copilot Studio agent. The instructions. This is where you have to be very specific. I'm telling Copilot here, don't use any knowledge sources other than the ones in this agent. I'm also telling it what flow to use. So there's a flow called Office 365 Outlook. And I'm telling it exactly how to respond, give it some HTML formatting, which can be great, as an output for email, and we can give it some personality. And if it doesn't find the answer in the knowledge sources, don't answer it, but let the user know that it left some questions unanswered. But if it can't find it directly in the SharePoint knowledge base, use the Google search flow, which I'm going to show you in a moment here. So very important are the instructions to be as clear and concise as possible. The knowledge base here is the collection of knowledge articles that have been built and have been submitted. And this might be like an HR directory. It could be a lessons learned. The other tool set is an actual flow. And in this case, you can see in the tool sets, you can see a flow called Google Search. This is the connector to the Google Drive, which is that external knowledge source. Let's go into that and take a look. You can see some familiarities, right? It looks just like Power Automate, although this is in Copilot Studio. But this is where when an agent calls the flow, it's going to list some Google folders, it's going to get some content, and it's going to respond back to the agent with the answers. And just like we did with Power Automate, we can also test it within Copilot Studio as well. So if you think about it, this is another layer of connectivity that expands outside of the Microsoft Graph. There's many ways that we could do this. This is just one of them in order to get some external content. Once you test the flow, if everything looks good and it checks green, great, we're ready to go. There's also the ability to look at the activity in the agent itself. So whether it's using the agents that are very much SharePoint driven, email driven, or maybe it's using the Google search connectivity in order to get some knowledge, that's what it's doing there, and we can track that very easily. We can also take a look at the flow in terms of a mapping view, where we can see the components that make up this certain flow. There's some low code if you want to get into that, but we can also go right back to the Power Automate console, and you can see that here's the flow itself. It represents itself back in Power Automate. So many ways to be able to leverage Power Automate for external knowledge sources and using Copilot Studio for really the more direct resources that are in SharePoint. But that's a very crucial piece to understand, is that if you want to use connectors to various sources, it doesn't have to be Google, it could be Box, Dropbox, or any other sources. There's an API connector for it. So lots of great stuff there. So when we think about also enhancing what we can do in our day-to-day jobs and roles and making sure we have a good flow and action plan and even make it more automated, Copilot itself, it's not just for Microsoft 365. I mean, it works really well when we have good structured data. Knowledge sources can include things like emails, SharePoint, Teams messaging, OneDrive. So a lot of the internal communications can be used as knowledge sources as well as documents. But there's also some really cool things you can do in terms of connecting to external sources. And in the example that we're going to see is we're going to also have Google Workspace as another knowledge source that Copilot can tap into in case it doesn't have everything it needs directly within Microsoft 365.
By having these external integrations through APIs, you got to remember MSPs, I mean, of course, we're all using Microsoft 365, or a good amount of us are using 365, but we manage our clients through third-party tools, RMM systems, third-party ticket systems, and most of these systems have open APIs, which would allow us to integrate Copilot Studio directly into our workflow when it comes to assisting our customers. For instance, we could create a chatbot where when the users first contact our support desk, they might initially speak to an AI bot that would help triage their issue. But this AI bot would have access to all of our ticket information and past resolutions for that company within the ticket system. So this could allow the AI bot to pull immense amounts of data and determine if this issue has occurred in this client before, and in turn give back a quick and easy solution to the user.
That's a really great use case there. And I really kind of think that this is going to happen starting in 2026 into the new year and definitely beyond.
This isn't isolated to just managed service clients. Every company out there is probably using SaaS applications that have these open APIs, and they may not even think about some of the possibilities that they could automate tasks in some of these applications that have nothing to do with Microsoft 365, yet they could integrate Copilot Studio to perform tasks, read data, and do certain tasks within these third-party applications, such as Google Workspace, as you said.
Wow, what a great build possibility there that you could do with Copilot Studio. The licensing that is applied, it does make it cost effective because Copilot Studio, it runs on consumption, which is actually a pretty decent way, to be able to kind of streamline the operational costs and the ebb and flow of activity that might happen during slower and busier times. Well, thanks again for joining. Appreciate your insights, especially from my side of the area in professional services over to your side into managed services, and then the customer base where we're looking at all kinds of verticals. Seems like the use case can happen to pretty much any sector that we see out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to take some questions at this time, so hang on there, and we'll be able to provide responses. And we're also going to talk about some ways that you can get some help from Managed Solution if you want to get started.